Welcome to Deals with Heels, where female entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Deborah.
And I'm Christina.
We are your hosts. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Yay! Back in the studio. One of our
Yeah.
favorite places to be.
It is. It's always fun because then it makes me dress up for the day and, just all the goodness.
You do look really beautiful today.
Well, thank you.
We have a great guest. I'm
Yes.
excited for.
And her name, friggin' so
Chrissy.
close.
She's the author of Reluctantly Resilient and CEO of AUI and Clarity HR, providing HR services and insurance to both for-profit and nonprofit companies. She describes herself as the chief cheerleader for both companies, setting direction, steering marketing content, and finding creative ways to disrupt to established business sectors. Chrissy is also the author of AUI Gives Back and Clarity Cares, two community impact programs, and she works to leave her community a better place. She's an advocate for families struggling with addiction and mental health issues. She serves on many nonprofit boards supporting her community. Please welcome Chrissy Myers to Deals with Heels.
Hello.
Well, hello, Christina and Deborah. It is lovely to see you today.
Well, thank you. So happy to have you here. Not a lot of HR in the business world when it comes to the small businesses. So that's interesting. And I love that.
It is definitely, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about it, and they don't think about every part of HR and what all is included in it. But what really resonated with me was the title of your book, The Reluctantly Resilient, because and we've talked about this on the show before, that it would be great if I would have just chosen to change my life and to make those decisions. But instead, it was thrust upon me to force me into going the direction that I needed to go because I was in functional freeze. And I thought to myself, that could be the name of my life story, I swear. That it just feels like that. I love that. I'm anxious to read your book. Tell us how you came up with that and kind of your story.
Yeah, so Reluctantly Resilient, a lot of times, especially as small business owners, we're resilient not because we want to be, but because we have to be. So writing the book came from some personal things that had happened to me. So I went through a personal hurricane and a professional hurricane at the same time. So while our third generation family business was transitioning through the Affordable Care Act in 2013, I also lost my first husband to suicide. And those were within 30 days of each other. So I wasn't resilient because I necessarily wanted to be. I was resilient and walked through those storms because I had to keep going. I was a single mom of two kids. We were working on transitioning the business. It was completely my livelihood at that point in time. So really learning and growing, moving from a fixed mindset, which I think a lot of women entrepreneurs oftentimes can struggle with, moving into a growth mindset, learning that sometimes life is happening for me, not necessarily to me, and continuing to grow. So Reluctantly Resilient is a series of, I would say it's like a hug and a high five for small business owners. It's a series of lessons that I've been through, not to say that I've got it all figured out, because I do not. But if you could skip some of the painful lessons that I've had and maybe just kind of speed a little bit further, I think it can be helpful for a lot of individuals.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely think so too. We both learn from other people a lot and reading case studies. One of the things that reminds me of is my mom. In fact, we just had a discussion in last week's episode about my mom, and my father died when I was really young, and my mom never remarried. And one of the things that she used to tell me all the time, didn't matter what problem I was having, she would, comfort me, but she told me the same thing every single time. And she didn't tell my siblings this, just me. And it was, you have two legs, stand on them, right? Completely telling me that I can do this, be resilient, do it yourself, you can do it. And so it is something that has always resonated with me, having kind of that resilience. Do you have anything like that in your life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I felt without my resilience, I would not be here where I am today. Just from the life that I lived growing up and the with my husband and PTSD and all of that, my mom dying at such a early age, all of those things of my life have made me resilient. Also, barely going to finish school. I didn't know if I was gonna walk across that stage the last day of school, and to be able to go make a career out of fast food and make 6 plus figures a year. So, it's those resilience has what truly like, that's one thing I do have is resilience. Not so much everything else, but don't tell me I can't do something.
I love that. What I'm always talking about, how can we make choices to become more intentionally resilient, for example, instead of I mean, we can do it. If we have to do it, we can do it.
We
Don't tell us that we can't. But how can we,
not come from such a survivor, just
yes,
have it.
be that way and be intentionally that way?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there are three things that really can help in becoming more resilient. So the first is to work on shifting from a fixed to a growth mindset, knowing that in growth mindset, we're always learning. There is no failure. There's always just a first attempt in learning, continuing to move forward, not thinking about having to white knuckle and just keep barreling through. Growth mindset is pulling perspective. So shifting into that flexible space where we're constantly growing. The second is to build our interpersonal effectiveness skills. So it's really the relationship that we have with how we communicate. So sometimes failing to be resilient is out of fear. So we don't know what we need to do. We don't know how to communicate effectively to get our needs met. So especially as business owners, when we build our interpersonal effectiveness skills, we make ourselves better employers. We also make ourselves better family members and better people. And the third thing I think that you need for resilience is a what else. And so a what else is what drives you beyond profit, beyond business purpose. It's what is that thing that is bigger than you for your business. Because let's be honest, if we just wanted to make a living, we'd all have jobs. So what keeps us resilient as small business leaders and small business owners is really having that what else, which is how do we build something bigger than ourselves. So for me, that what else is encouraging small business owners to add philanthropy in their business and also to build their interpersonal effectiveness skills, not just for themselves, but for their employees. Because when we change the emotional wellness of our team members, not only are we making our workplace a better place to be, but we're also making our community better because they ripple into the community, into their families and other friends and other people that they touch. So those are the three things that I think are really important to building resilience: that growth mindset, interpersonal effectiveness, and having a what else.
So when you do I mean, you're an HR person, so that whole employee relationship is really important, and I think it's something that a lot of us as entrepreneurs forget about. How can, as an employer, can we encourage our employees and our team to have resilience too, and to have the similar mindset that we do? Think about it. If all your employees are all on their healing journey too, how much easier life would be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think so much of that comes from modeling behavior. So knowing that your business is your baby, and the individuals that work for you are the caretakers of your baby. You want to make sure that you are encouraging and empowering those individuals who are going to be taking care of your business to take care of themselves as well. So modeling that behavior, being vulnerable, being willing to say, I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation with you, not because I want to, but because I need to, because it's what's best for the business and it's what's best for me and what's best for you as my team member. So really thinking of how we can model those behaviors, not always because they're easy, but they're what is right in that moment.
And I think the fear is what makes people not have that conversation. I do sales coaching, and not asking for business, not actually asking for it, is a fear thing. So, do you have tips on how to overcome the fear of it other than just suck it up and do it, girl?
No, I mean, other than suck it up and do it, there's a lot of things. I would say we probably, Deborah, have a lot of similar interactions in dealing with fear because on the HR side with small business, there's always that fear. I don't want to have that difficult conversation with my employee. What if they quit? What if they get mad at me? What if they yell at me? And you're dealing with those issues as to what if they say no? So a few things that you can really work on first is always education. So finding a coach, finding someone who can help you build the right types of skills, modeling that behavior and practicing. A lot of times, I know, especially for me as a recovering perfectionist, I don't want to mess it up. I always want to have a perfect conversation. And as we're dealing with the human experience, there is no such thing as a perfect conversation. There's always going to be mess. There's always going to be those things that are a little uncomfortable. We may have anxiety. We may have some nervousness. There may be some tears. Um, I know that initially when I started in business and as a growing manager, I hated having to deal with people that cry. Now for me, crying is just another emotion that we work and we communicate through. So I would say first is finding a coach that can help you build some of those conversations. Also, finding someone who can be a sounding board for you. So, I am a huge advocate that everyone at some point in time, whether they want to call it therapy or not, should go to therapy. So, if you want to call it emotional intelligence coaching, that's totally fine. We can call it that. But building your own mental wellness is really important because it enables you to kind of add those skills into your tool set. The other thing that I would say is that as you're modeling that behavior for your employees, encourage and praise whenever you see individuals having those uncomfortable conversations and that vulnerability. Take those moments to really say, "Hey, you did a good job. I know that was probably hard for you to express that. Thank you for sharing that with me." And the same thing, reward yourself when you're willing to have a hard conversation. I know for me, for a long period of time, I struggled with saying no and realizing that no was a complete sentence. So when I started saying no, yeah, are we in agreement, ladies?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
That's those are them famous boundaries. Once you get them,
Yes.
it's a whole new world.
It
Yes.
definitely is.
Uh,
So as I was creating some of those boundaries for me, especially in what I was doing in philanthropy, I struggled to say no because all of a sudden people wanted me. And it was like, oh, great, they're all asking me to do these things. But then I was overwhelmed to the point that I wasn't giving the time and attention to my family that they needed. And so when I started saying no, I started rewarding myself with positive reinforcement. So I got a massage the first time I said, no, I'm not going to attend that event and I'm not going to serve on that board. I'm going to save some time. So, really learning and rewarding myself for making the right types of choices, I think can be very beneficial as well.
I struggled a lot with saying no, and I was a big fix it, and I wanted to help people, and I've said no to people I love a lot after I set some non-negotiable boundaries, like children of mine. I mean, it was really important to me to be able to live on my own terms, and so I did that. One of the things that helps my coaching clients, is role playing, being able to role play that conversation. Is that something that you do? Do you as a coach, or I mean, just finding another business owner probably would help, but it helps if they can tell you ways to overcome.
Yes, especially in the HR space, as we talk about how to have a difficult conversation with an employee. Oftentimes, we're called in to kind of help have that conversation, but it's really about teaching the business owner how to have that expectation conversation. So, absolutely, modeling that behavior, coaching through that behavior, role playing through that behavior is really important. And the other thing I would say is learning to create a framework for yourself, whether it's a decision framework, a communication framework. What are the basic tenets of what we want to accomplish and how we're going to make a decision or how we're going to communicate? And let's continue to live through those from a value system perspective. So, as a family, we're an entrepreneurial family. We call ourselves Team Awesome Sauce. So, we've got 4 people with 3 different last names. You get yourself a team name. So for Team Awesome Sauce, we have a communication cadence in how we make decisions for our family, that we have 6 components that it has to meet that criterion for whether or not we're going to say yes or no to something. If we're going to add another business, another major decision, another organization that we're going to serve, whether or not we're going to audition for the high school play. We run through all of the different the framework of how we make a decision as a family. So then we see, is it consistent with our values? Is it consistent with our family motto, put more awesome in the sauce? Are we doing the things that we need to continue to move forward in life and enjoy our awesome sauce life?
That sounds right up your alley,
Eh,
Christina, with
I'm
for
like, my
me,
wheels, because
yep.
it's already the king and queen, the queen's wealth play. I mean, like, yes, I totally go through all of that. So, yes, you're right up my alley.
I love the steps for decision making. I definitely think that that's something that kids and teenagers struggle with. How do I make a decision? How do I choose all of those things? So I think that's a really important lesson to learn as long as you're not crushing creativity and spontaneity, Chrissy, as the creative person in
And
the
see, and
group.
I think that that's where the time and the balance comes in of just making sure, like, that should be part of your non-negotiable is creative time, and sometimes have structured creative time, but also have the freedom of, "I'm not doing anything this weekend besides painting."
Well, and some decisions shouldn't be spontaneous.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we're
Mhm.
both ADHD people. We make a lot of spontaneous decisions, and sometimes
Spontaneous.
because we waited till the last minute and now we got to decide. And so not doing that is a really healthy
That
practice.
that's a huge practice, I feel, because I feel that that would save a lot of people being in that reluctant resilience.
Um Staying with like that whole kind of small business HR space, what are some typical mistakes that you see small business owners and entrepreneurs make when they're starting out that can really get you later if you don't do it right from the beginning?
Yes. So there's a couple. I would say the first is, I would, no, there's three. The first is fear. So there's always that it's just easier for me to do it myself. I don't want to hire somebody. I don't want to be responsible for having to take care of anybody else. It's just easier if I do it all myself. So that's the first that sometimes can prevent us from scaling, prevent us from growing. Sometimes not always living in our best self. So if we know that we're really good at systems and customer service, but we're really bad at marketing. Um, whether we so we hire a coach to help us with marketing, or we hire someone and then we hire them the coach to help them with marketing. So it's getting over that first fear of I need to have a team member. So that's number one. After someone has people, the second one that tends to be the biggest issue that I deal with personally is when people are emotionally attached to their employees. They've watched them grow the business, they've done a lot of life together, and they feel absolutely responsible for this person to the point that when that person is no longer in service to their business or isn't performing in an optimal way, they don't know how to have the conversation of, I need you to do better. I need you to do this instead of. So that tends to be a struggle, that emotional attachment, being more attached to the employees and the team members as opposed to the true baby, which is your business. And the third, which I think is something that can absolutely get in the way for most employers because they don't realize it going in, is their handbook. So oftentimes when you're dealing with a new entrepreneur, if they've come from corporate America, they don't want all the rules and regulations. They don't want to be told what to do anymore. They just want to have a really good business. They want to have a cool vibe. They don't want to tell people what to do. And that's where it can be a little bit difficult because what we sometimes forget to remember as employers is that as employees, we liked guardrails. We liked knowing where we needed to be on the road. And so I think that a handbook is one of the most important things that someone can do for their small business initially because it gives them the guardrails that they need to be able to manage their business. Because oftentimes when someone calls us and says, hey, I've got this really difficult employee issue and I don't know what to deal with, how to deal with it, we say, what does your handbook say? That's the first thing we'll ask. And usually they go, I don't have a handbook. It's like, okay, well, if we don't have a handbook, we have to default to whatever state or federal rule is the general established practice. And sometimes that can be a detriment to your organization. So, really, just getting your handbook. So, knowing what does it look like when somebody has paid time off? What does it look like when somebody has sick time? How long can somebody not show up for a job that we can consider it be abandoned? What's the right way to communicate with each other? What's our acceptable use policy for the devices that we have within our organization? My dad used to always say, we're all friends until we're not. And so I've kind of lived my life in that way, thinking, if we have established rules as to what things look like when we're not friends, it makes sense for helping us to move forward when we are friends.
So when somebody's starting out, do they need to hire an HR company to help them with a handbook, or are there some online sources that they can reach out to put it together?
Yeah, so there's some different online sources that you probably can use. We have an online tool that we use for our organizations. It's pretty affordable. It's less than $1,000 a year. We do a handbook for about $2,500. So that's not super cost prohibitive. I would tell you this: do not Google your HR questions, especially if you don't know what state you're in and what state you're going to be governed. If you have employees that are in a different state than you are, let's say, for example, you're in Ohio and you have employees in the state of California, you're governed by the state of California. So be careful in how you Google your questions, because if you Google an answer and it talks about Texas, you're not in Texas. That's the wrong employment law. So, really making sure that you're dialed into where your state is, where you are located within your state, because now we're starting to see local governments and municipalities create different types of employer laws. It used to be simple, Deborah. It used to be just the Department of Labor, but now it's the Department of Labor. Now it's whatever state you live in. And sometimes, depending on where you are, it's the local municipality too that has
Mhm.
different rules and regulations for work.
You keep seeing that with minimum wage. They keep different, just it's a basic on how you pay somebody. They'll alter those rules even on a community level, not in Oklahoma, but in other states for sure. I mean, they should here, but we're way too right wing conservative for that to be happening here. What one of the things that I think I know I do, and I know Christina does, is we will hire a lot of contract employees that'll come in and just work on this project only. And I might use them again on a project later in the year, but it's not somebody that's an employee that's coming to work every day and I'm hiring from then on out. What are some things we can do to protect ourselves when we have those?
Yes, contract workers versus the traditional W 2, because the federal government would appreciate if the entire United States was all W 2 hourly employees. So you have to remember that that is the general standard that we govern by. So when it comes to contract workers, it's what are you controlling? Are you giving them a component of work to do? Are you giving them the capacity to do that in their own time, how they see fit? If you are controlling how they do the work, where they go, when they show up, how they do it, um, then you're on the furry edge of whether or not you have a W-2 employee or a 1099 contracted employee. So if that individual has their own business, they have their own LLC, that's an easy way to kind of work through that control. They have other customers. If you are their only source of employment or their only source of income, then you've got some additional challenges. So, really, part of being a good contract person to work with is making sure that you ask the right questions to protect yourself. So, do you have other clients? Do you have references? How do you want me to pay you? Who do you want me to pay? So that makes it a little bit easier in that stuff. So when we have our fractional employees at Clarity, they're all W-2 employees through our organization, and we're billed through contractors. So we have a contract agency with a relationship with a small business owner. They will pay our company directly, so they don't have to worry about that right to control test, because we handle the right to control issues.
That sounds
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's real similar because you have to go through that when you have. I ran a construction company for a cool minute while I was raising kids, and the workers' comp laws. I mean, they really follow that exact same thing, and so it is important that you keep those straight. If you have somebody working on pretty much a project to project basis, can you still W two them if they don't have regular hours?
You can make them that hourly employee, and you just add them into your payroll. So you'd be paying, ideally, what that means is that you're paying additional payroll taxes. If you want to avoid that, or you want something that's a little bit more cost effective in that that person's not going to be employed all the time, they're more seasonal, you could look at it as a project based work. But the question is, what other work are they doing in the meantime that is not necessarily your responsibility, but then also how are you paying them? So I mean, ideally, if they have an LLC or they have a standalone business where even if they're not soliciting a ton of other customers, they have the capacity to do that, it does make it easier for you to prove this is a contractor, I only hire them for this specific type of work. I mean, a great example is graphic designers. We have a graphic designer, we pay them for 5 hours of graphic design work a month. This is where she invoices us, we bill her. Part of it is also invoicing. Require the contractor to invoice you for the service and the work. Create a clear scope of work, sign off on it with you, sign off on it with the contractor that they've created, to ensure that you can kind of continue to keep some of those things transparent.
Okay. One final thing I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to pass up on your philanthropy and business. I have a couple of clients that have started a nonprofit. I'm a founding board member for one of them, a charity called Share and Care Relief. It's a client of mine is a tree service client, an arborist, and they did a lot of free work after we had a big major ice storm here in 2020. And so it had just grown beyond what they could financially sustain on their own. And so we formed a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's still going, and they're the nonprofit's number one donor still, because they're both of the owners are on the board too. So when you talk, it's such an important thing, and it can grow your business, but it's also important to see giving back and for your employees too. We just have a few minutes left, but if you would tell us kind of about your program for that, I'm really interested in hearing it.
Yeah. So one of our core values for AUI and Clarity is community. And so we believe that serving the community is just as important as doing business in the community. And so with AUI Gives Back and Clarity Cares, we give our employees time during the year where they can volunteer on their own, where we will continue to pay them. It's almost like a PTO day, but they can take their service hours. And then we also realized that a lot of our team members were serving in the community regardless of whether or not we were paying them to do so. So we enable them, we tell them to track their hours, and the individual who has the most volunteer hours at the end of the year gets $1,000 donation to the charity of their choice. So really building a spirit of philanthropy within our business has been our what else, because what we want to make sure that our clients understand is that their support of our small business enables us to do other things in the community to continue to care for the community. So really building that spirit within our organization has been really important. And it used to be I was the only person that would spearhead. I would pick the organization, I would pick our volunteer days. Now our team is creating those volunteer days. They're deciding where they want to go and how they want to serve. And then also looking at, we've got certain amounts of money each quarter that we can give to different organizations. We have different types of drives and different items that we'll collect for other organizations. This year, AUI is turning 50. And so in service, we're doing 50 acts of service to celebrate those 50 years. And we're in the middle of the year. Our goal is to be at Act 50 by the end of September because our fourth quarter is so busy. And so really kind of moving towards, getting all of those things done. And some of it has been, we had a service day at the soapbox derby. So we did flower beds and painted and helped them get ready for the All American Soapbox Derby that happens in the summertime. We've done some different things with organizations that collecting items for our International Institute that deals with refugees. Our employees like to dress down. So to incentivize, we might as well give back while we're dressing down. So we do jeans pass days. So we collect money every month and then pick an organization that we want to give to, one of which was Grace House. Grace House is hospice for the homeless. So individuals that do not have a home or do not have access to hospice care. They have individuals they have the hospice center. They have individuals that volunteer that sit with those individuals that have no family, so that they don't have to die alone. So that's another organization that we support.
That's
I
a
I love that.
yes, I mean, I feel giving back to your community is such a great thing. And I love that you're sharing that because it's one of those things leading with that servant heart is only going to make the world a little bit better each and every day.
And it helps your employees, it helps them have give back, but it gives them confidence in your business and gives them that warm, fuzzy feeling for themselves and your business too. I really love that. I think that's a fantastic idea. Um, Wrapping up, um, how, if someone's interested in your services or in finding out more information about your philanthropy stuff and how all of that works, how's the best way, or to buy your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
So some of the best ways to connect with me on either LinkedIn or Instagram, it's Chrissy Myers CEO. Reluctantly Resilient is the book, and it's available on Amazon. And it's not just for reading, it's also for listening. So, for those of you business owner
Ooh.
friends that don't have time to read a book, but you will listen to a book, it's available on Audible. Reluctantlyresilientthebook.com. And then, as far as services, clarityhr.com is the best place to learn about small business fractional HR. We're happy to schedule a conversation and consultation with you.
So did you narrate your book?
I did. And it was the hardest 3 days of my life. I hated it. But it's really good now. But say that again. Can you say that again, Chrissy? Read that again. I had a really patient producer. So shout out
Oh
to
my
anyone who
gosh.
produces podcasts or audiobooks,
How
because
how many pages is your book?
it's about 160. So it's about a 3.5 hour listen. So what I keep telling people is about if you got a 2 hour drive, or like it's a great
Yeah.
one tank trip.
Well, I was just estimating how long it took you to narrate it and record the reading of it for based on the pages.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
That's what I was doing. I love that. I'm definitely going to check out your book. I may get the Audible version just because I'm interested in it. I know some
See, and
voiceover
that's all I
people that
do.
have kind of branched out into narrating books as a part of their voiceover work, and I just am curious about it.
Oh yeah, some people I have to put like at 1.5 or 2
I
to
might
listen.
have to. I'm a fast reader, and so it's harder for me sometimes to listen or even watch video if I'm in a hurry because I can read faster than that. But I'm
There, I will tell
interested.
you, if you do it as audio, if you do it at 1.5, I sound like a chipmunk because I talk fast to begin with. So
I
good
was
luck.
gonna say, I was
Good
gonna
luck.
say,
Yes.
Exactly.
well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this episode. Thank you to all of our audience and listeners. You can find links to all of Chrissy's stuff in our show notes and links to Christina's business, The Declutter Queen, and mine at Hexagon Media. Please download, listen, share, subscribe. And until next week, we're
We're
out.
out.